So obviously here's your gas tank, and the exhaust is in the way. So you're gonna have to remove the exhaust, or at least part of it. And if yours is not super rusted like ours is, you're probably going to be able to just unbolt it here and here, remove it off the muffler. Obviously you'll need a new gasket, and then if you follow it up right in front of the catalytic converter, you're gonna have a flange with 2 bolts as well. You can unbolt it there and drop it down. Of course, there's the O2 sensor. That's gonna have to get either disconnected or unthreaded from the exhaust. Now, because ours is rusted, we might go a different route. And if you do choose to go a different route, basically what that means is you can either cut it somewhere and then clamp it back on. If you think that the bolts or the flanges are too fragile and they won't make it, you can cut it anywhere, and then they make these clamps that basically slide on both sides with a gasket in between and secure everything together. Of course, if you know how to weld, you can weld it back together. Basically, what this comes down to is get the exhaust out of the way so we can drop the gas tank. I'm going to try and disconnect this flange here, this pipe off the muffler. It might work, it might not. As you can see, it's in somewhat poor condition. So I'm going to heat up the nuts on the back side and then try to take the bolts out. Okay, there's the second one. Separates, perfect. Now at the front of the car, right in front of the catalytic converter, there's another flange here. My bolts here are extremely rotted, so first I wanted to cut them, but I decided to, instead of making all that dust, to just break them off with this. Okay, that's exactly what I wanted actually. There we go. Now let's separate this. There we go. Obviously you're going to need new gaskets for both of these areas. We'll worry about this later. Now at the back, you see a hanger here. I sprayed it with some lubricant, preferably silicone spray is what you want to use. And then I'm just going to grab it with some pliers and pop it off. There we go. Watch out when it comes down. Obviously you have to support it with something. We still have an oxygen sensor hooked up at the front. I'm going to support it with my pole jack here. Let's move to the front. Now let's disconnect this one at the front here. This is the last thing holding this part of the exhaust on. So keep in mind that it will fall down at this point, but I do have my 2 pole jacks supporting it. And the reason I did this is so that I don't have to disconnect the oxygen sensor. That way it can stay here and I can just move the pipe out of my way. If you're working on the ground, obviously this is going to be easier because you can just lay this down on the ground. I have my transmission jack here, which has this fuel tank support on it. Obviously if you're on the ground, you're going to have to do something a little different. Maybe you don't even need a support, but whatever you do, make sure that when you take these straps down, it doesn't come falling off. So I'm gonna position this here like that, put a little bit of pressure on it, not a lot, and now we'll take these straps down. Okay, if you follow the strap all the way at the back up top there, there is a 14mm bolt. Remove that. There's the bolt. And let's take the other strap down as well, or the bolt for the strap, I guess. Okay, now let's pull the straps down. These are stuck to the tank here. Okay, broke free. Hold this down. I'm replacing these straps. So obviously these are in poor condition. Now because I'm replacing these straps, I'm going to take this rubber protective layer off and set it aside. Keep in mind that these 2 straps are different. So to get the straps out, you actually have to punch out this pin that's in the middle here. So I'm going to spray it with some rust penetrant. I'm going to load it up as much as possible because it is pretty rusty. And I want this to hopefully come out. Do this to both sides, and then we'll get a punch and drive it out. Okay, lift this up right about here, and let's see if we can punch this through. There we go. It is coming out, so that is good. Take this out, strap comes out, do the same to the other side. Now let's put the rubber piece on these straps here. It basically just slides on to both sides like this. And I'm going to put one side on and then guide the other side on as well. Sometimes this is a little tricky to do because you kind of have to peel it back and then it seats itself into place. Now take your straps and I'm going to tuck them up and over the sway bar here. Make sure that they kind of go to where they're supposed to go. Just leave them like this for now. We'll come back to them in a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that they go in their approximate location. So now I'm going to bring my strap up, put it into where it needs to be, and slide this pin through. I greased it up, or I cleaned it up first, then I greased it up. Hopefully that'll not only help it slide in, but it'll also help prevent rust. That went through, perfect. Let's do the same to the other side. For this side, I'm going to take this nut off, 10 millimeter, that holds the parking brake cable in place. Hopefully this will allow me to get better access in there. Slide the cable off. There we go. Now we can get the pin up in there. Okay, let's thread this back on, make it nice and snug. All right, let's put the strap up and start in the bolts. Make sure they're nice and snug. Let's do the other one as well. Let's remove the support. Now let's go ahead and put the exhaust back on, of course, put on a new gasket at the front and at the rear. Let's reattach this hanger at the back. There we go, push the hanger all the way through. Now let's reconnect the front hanger. Slide it on, and let's bolt it up. Let's get these two bolts back in. Snug them up. Perfect. Let's get the front bolts in and tightened up.